Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is my story, one I never thought I'd share, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it. What happened to me changed everything I believed in about love, trust, and betrayal. So here it goes. The bounce house deflated slowly, wheezing like a dying giant. It felt symbolic. My son, Leo, oblivious, was tearing into another piece of cake, chocolate smeared across his face like war paint. He just turned 8 years old. And his mother, my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, apparently, chose this exact moment, surrounded by half-eaten hot dogs, spilled juice boxes, and the fading echoes of hyperactive children to detonate our lives. She stood there, plate of cake in hand, next to him. Mark, her colleague, the guy I'd shaken hands with maybe half an hour earlier, forcing a smile because Sarah insisted he come. He's been such a support at work. Honey, it would be rude not to. Support. Right. Her eyes, usually warm, were cold, distant. She looked at me, then flicked her gaze towards Mark, a small, almost imperceptible nod passing between them. Then she turned back to me, cleared her throat, and said the words that shattered the cheerful, primary-colored facade of Leo's birthday party. David, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. Just like that. Flat. Emotionless. Like ordering coffee. Except she said it while standing shoulder to shoulder with the man she was leaving me for, while our son was 10 feet away, happily oblivious in a sugar rush. The world tilted. The cheerful music suddenly sounded jarring, offensive. Other parents milling around pretended not to notice, their eyes darting away, suddenly intensely interested in their own children or the melting ice cream cake. But I saw the pity, the morbid curiosity. And standing beside Sarah, Mark had the audacity to look sympathetic. Sympathetic. The air crackled with unspoken words, with years of history curdling in seconds. I felt my face flush, a hot wave of shame and rage washing over me. My hands clenched. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to physically remove Mark from my backyard, from my life. But Leo chose that moment to run over, holding up a new Lego spaceship. Dad, look. Uncle Mark helped me build the tricky part. Uncle Mark. The name tasted like bile. I forced my face into a semblance of a smile for my son, kneeling down to admire his creation, the plastic bricks cold against my trembling fingers. Wow, buddy, that's amazing, I choked out, my voice sounding strangled even to my own ears. Sarah and Mark just stood there, watching, waiting, as if dropping a bomb and then expecting me to politely sweep up the debris while they walked away hand in hand. That moment, the sight of them together, the casual cruelty of her timing, the way Mark just stood there like he belonged, it burned itself into my memory, a permanent scar on what should have been a happy day. The bounce house finally collapsed into a sad heap of vinyl, and I knew, with chilling certainty, that my life had just done the same. We weren't perfect, Sarah and I. Who is, after 15 years? We met young, college sweethearts, cliché and all. I was studying engineering. She was in marketing. She was vibrant, ambitious, funny. I was quieter, more methodical, but she brought me out of my shell. We balanced each other, or so I thought. We built a life, decent jobs, a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and eventually, Leo. Our miracle baby, after years of trying and heartache. He became the center of our universe. Looking back, maybe that's where the cracks started. We poured everything into him, into being parents, and maybe forgot a little about being partners. The late nights, the financial stress, the constant juggling, it takes a toll. Communication started breaking down. Little disagreements festered. Intimacy dwindled, replaced by exhaustion and routine. I noticed changes in Sarah over the last year or so. She started working later, had more work dinners, more conferences. She became more critical of me, my clothes, my job, which, ironically, paid for the comfortable life she seemed increasingly dissatisfied with, the way I loaded the dishwasher. She started spending more time on her phone, guarding it jealously. Red flags, right? Hindsight is a cruel mistress. I chalked it up to stress, maybe a midlife crisis brewing. I suggested counseling, date nights, a vacation just for us. She brushed it all off. We're fine, David. Just tired. Fine. We were drowning, and she was telling me we were just tired. Mark entered the picture about 6 months before the birthday party from hell. He was a new hire in her department, a senior manager. Suddenly, it was Mark says this, and Mark thinks we should do that. He was brilliant, apparently. Innovative. Dynamic. Everything I supposedly wasn't. He was also recently divorced, charming, and, I had to admit, conventionally handsome in that generic, suit-wearing way. I felt a flicker of unease, but I trusted Sarah. Or maybe I just didn't want to see what was right in front of me. Denial is a powerful anesthetic. I remember asking her once, point blank, if there was anything going on between them. She laughed it off, accused me of being jealous and insecure. Gaslighting 101. I see that now. She made me feel guilty for even questioning her loyalty. So I backed off, swallowed my doubts, told myself I was being paranoid. I focused on work, on Leo, on trying to be the supportive husband she claimed she needed. I tried to bridge the growing distance, suggesting we take up a hobby together, plan a family trip, anything to reconnect. Her excuses became more elaborate, her disinterest more palpable. The night she came home late smelling faintly of cologne I didn't own, the hushed phone call she took in the other room, the way she flinched sometimes when I touched her. I noticed it all, but refused to assemble the pieces. It was easier to believe the lie, easier than confronting the devastating truth. Until the truth stood 10 feet away from my son's birthday cake, holding hands figuratively, if not literally, with my wife, while she calmly dismantled our marriage in front of God and everyone. The sheer audacity of it still takes my breath away. At our son's 8th birthday party, with him right there. It wasn't just infidelity, it was a public execution of our relationship, staged on sacred ground. The immediate aftermath of Sarah's announcement was a blur of forced pleasantries and barely contained panic. The party had to continue, for Leo's sake. I moved through the remaining hour like an automaton, grilling burgers I couldn't eat, making small talk with parents whose eyes screamed pity, cutting more cake with hands that shook uncontrollably. Sarah and Mark, meanwhile, acted with a chilling normalcy that somehow made it worse. They mingled, laughed, helped clean up. Mark even offered me a beer, a gesture so dripping with false camaraderie I almost knocked it out of his hand. I declined, my voice tight. Every interaction was agony. Seeing them together, knowing what I now knew, felt like swallowing shards of glass. Sarah avoided my gaze, busying herself with Leo or chatting animatedly with other mothers, occasionally shooting Mark these loaded glances that spoke volumes. It was a performance, a grotesque play where I was the unwilling, humiliated protagonist. I felt trapped in my own backyard, a prisoner of social convention. How could she do this? Here? Now? The disrespect wasn't just towards me, but towards Leo, towards the sanctity of his childhood innocence, towards the 15 years we had built together. It was a calculated cruelty, designed to inflict maximum damage, to make it clear there was no going back. Once the last guest trickled out, leaving behind a battlefield of discarded paper plates and deflated balloons, the fragile dam holding back my emotions finally broke. Leo was inside, happily sorting his new presents, oblivious to the storm gathering outside. Sarah started gathering trash bags, humming softly, as if nothing monumental had just happened. Mark lingered by the gate, shifting his weight awkwardly, supposedly waiting for her. I walked straight up to him, my voice dangerously low. "Get out. Get off my property. Now." He looked startled, then glanced at Sarah, who gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head. She wanted him there. As a witness? As backup? "David, don't make a scene," Sarah said, her tone sharp, devoid of any warmth. "Make a scene?" I repeated, the words tasting like ash. You drop a bomb like that, here, in front of him. I jerked my head towards Mark, in front of our son's party, and you're worried about me making a scene? The injustice of it choked me. Mark took a tentative step forward. Look, man, I know this is. You know nothing. I cut him off, stepping closer, invading his space. You're the colleague, the support. Get out before I physically remove you. Years of repressed frustration, of ignored suspicions, of feeling inadequate, boiled over. He held up his hands, a placating gesture that only fueled my rage. Okay, okay, I'm going. He looked at Sarah again. Call me later? She nodded curtly. He slipped out the gate, leaving Sarah and me alone in the wreckage of the afternoon. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. How could you? I finally whispered, the anger momentarily replaced by a profound, aching hurt. How could you do that to me? To Leo. She wouldn't look at me. She continued picking up stray napkins, her movements jerky. It had to be done, David. I couldn't pretend anymore. It wasn't fair to any of us. Not fair. My voice rose despite myself. You think ambushing me at our son's birthday party with your lover standing right there is fair? You think that's how you end a 15-year marriage? He's not just my lover, she snapped back, finally meeting my eyes. Her gaze was defiant, hard. I love him, and he loves me. Something you haven't done in years. That accusation hit me like a physical blow. Hadn't loved her? I'd rearranged my life, supported her career ambitions even when it meant sacrificing my own, endured the emotional distance, the dismissals, the criticism, all while hoping we could find our way back. I loved her through infertility, through financial strains, through the sheer exhaustion of raising a child. Maybe I hadn't been demonstrative enough lately. Maybe I'd retreated into myself as the chasm between us widened. But love? It was always there, buried under the layers of hurt and misunderstanding. That's not true, Sarah, I said, my voice hoarse. That's a lie you're telling yourself to justify this. It doesn't matter anymore, she said, turning away again, picking up the cake knife. I've made my decision. I want a divorce. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The premeditation was staggering. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision fueled by emotion. This was planned, calculated. The party, Mark's presence, the timing, it was all orchestrated. She wanted to inflict pain, to make a statement. Why? Was it revenge for some perceived slight? A power play? Or just sheer, unadulterated callousness? The why hammered at my brain, but no answers came. I felt hollowed out, numb. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and a gaping wound where my marriage used to be. I looked at the house we'd built together, the swing set I'd assembled for Leo, the garden Sarah used to tend with such care. It all felt tainted now, like a crime scene. Where will you go? I asked, the question purely practical, devoid of emotion. I'll stay at my sister's for a while, she replied coolly. Mark and I are looking for a place. Mark and I. The casual coupling of their names sent another jolt of pain through me. And Leo, we'll figure it out. Shared custody, obviously. I'd never keep him from you. The words sounded rehearsed, devoid of sincerity. She packed a bag quickly, efficiently, while I stood watching, feeling like a ghost in my own home. Leo came out, confused. Mommy, where are you going? Sarah knelt, hugged him tightly, her composure finally cracking for a moment. Mommy just needs to stay at Aunt Carol's for a little bit, sweetie. But I'll see you very soon, okay? I love you so much. She kissed him, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door without a backward glance at me. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the sudden, deafening silence. I sank onto the back steps, the cool concrete a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. Leo came and sat beside me, leaning his head against my shoulder. Is Mommy mad? He asked, his small voice trembling slightly. I pulled him close, burying my face in his hair, fighting back tears. No, buddy, I lied, my voice thick. Mommy's not mad. Everything's going to be okay. But as I held my son amidst the debris of his ruined birthday party, I had no idea how I was going to make that promise come true. The betrayal was absolute, the future terrifyingly uncertain. All I knew was that the woman I had loved, the life I had known, was gone, detonated in the most brutal way imaginable. And somewhere, deep beneath the shock and the grief, a cold, hard knot of anger began to form. She wanted a war? Fine. But she had underestimated her opponent. The days following the party were a fog of disbelief, grief, and blinding anger. Sleep offered little escape, punctuated by nightmares where Sarah and Mark laughed while the bounce house deflated over and over again. Waking up was worse, the crushing weight of reality hitting me anew each morning. Leo was my anchor, my reason to get out of bed, to put on a brave face I didn't feel. Explaining the situation to an 8-year-old was excruciating. How do you tell your child that his mother chose to leave, that his family unit is irrevocably broken, without shattering his world completely? We settled on a heavily sanitized version. Mommy and Daddy need some space apart to figure things out, but we both love you very, very much, and that will never change. He asked questions, of course. Why? When is Mommy coming home? Is it my fault? Each question felt like another turn of the knife. I reassured him constantly, smothered him with affection, tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible, but I saw the confusion and sadness in his eyes. He started wetting the bed again, something he hadn't done since he was 4. He became clingier, needing constant reassurance that I wasn't going to leave too. It broke my heart into a million pieces. Sarah, meanwhile, seemed to compartmentalize effortlessly. She called Leo every night, arranged pickup times for visits via curt texts to me, and generally acted as if this was just a minor logistical hurdle. Our conversations were strictly limited to Leo, strained and sterile. Any attempt I made to discuss us, to understand the why beyond her rehearsed lines about not being happy and needing something more, was shut down immediately. It's done, David. There's nothing more to say. The coldness was baffling. Was this the same woman who cried during sad movies, who rescued stray cats, who held my hand tightly during Leo's birth? It felt like a stranger was wearing her face. The lawyer she mentioned contacted me within days. His name was Alan Croft, a slick, expensive-looking guy whose reputation preceded him, known for aggressive tactics and getting his clients, usually the higher-earning spouse in messy divorces, exactly what they wanted. Sarah wasn't the higher earner. I was. But she had clearly painted a picture for him, one where she was the wronged party needing protection. The initial petition was brutal. She wanted primary custody of Leo, significant child support far exceeding state guidelines, alimony that would cripple me financially, and exclusive use of the marital home, the home I primarily paid for. And, buried in the legalese, was a request for me to pay her legal fees. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She blows up our lives, shacks up with her affair partner, who, I discovered through some discreet digging, wasn't just recently divorced, but still legally married, though separated, and now expected me to finance her new life while taking my son and my home? Oh, hell no. That petition lit a fire under me. The grief and shock began to morph into steely resolve. This wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. It was about protecting my son, my financial stability, and my future. It was about fighting back against the narrative she was trying to spin. I needed my own lawyer, someone who could match Croft's aggression, but with integrity. Friends recommended Jessica Riley, known for being tough but fair, specializing in complex divorces, especially those involving infidelity and custody disputes. Our first meeting was a revelation. Jessica listened patiently as I poured out the whole sordid story, the gradual breakdown, the suspicions, the gaslighting, the party, the affair partner, the divorce petition. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She offered strategy. Okay, David, she said, her eyes sharp and focused. She fired the first shot, and she aimed low. That gives us an advantage if we play it smart. Family court judges don't look kindly on public ambushes at children's birthday parties, especially when an affair partner is involved. She explained the legal landscape, custody factors, asset division, the relevance, or sometimes irrelevance, of infidelity in our state's divorce laws. She warned me it would be a marathon, not a sprint, emotionally and financially draining. But she also validated my anger, assuring me that Sarah's demands were excessive and likely wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. The key, Jessica emphasized, is documentation and composure. Document everything, every text, every email, every interaction regarding Leo. Note any inconsistencies in her story, any signs she's prioritizing her new relationship over Leo's well-being. And in front of her, in court, even when you want to explode, stay calm. Let her be the unreasonable one. This became my mantra. Document. Stay calm. Fight smart. I started keeping a detailed journal. Logged every time Sarah changed pickup times last minute because she had plans with Mark. Noted the expensive weekend trips they took while claiming poverty in her legal filings. Saved screenshots of her social media, surprisingly careless, initially, where she alluded to her newfound happiness long before the official separation. I also started digging deeper into Mark. A simple online search and a few discreet inquiries through connections revealed more than Sarah likely knew, or perhaps chose to ignore. Mark had a history. His separation from his own wife was far from amicable, involving accusations of financial misconduct and infidelity, patterns, it seemed. He wasn't the successful, stable manager Sarah portrayed. His career was shaky, and he reportedly had significant debts. He wasn't a knight in shining armor. He was a parasite looking for his next host. Did Sarah know? Or was she blinded by the affair fog? Either way, this information could be crucial leverage. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hard determination. Sarah had underestimated me. She thought I'd crumble, roll over, give her everything she wanted just to make the pain stop. She mistook my kindness for weakness, my quiet nature for passivity. She didn't realize that pushing me this far, hurting our son in the process, would awaken something fierce within me. The plan wasn't fully formed yet, but the objective was clear: expose the truth, protect Leo, secure a fair settlement, and ensure that Sarah and Mark faced the consequences of their actions. This wasn't about petty revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about taking back control of the narrative they had tried to hijack. The legal battle was just beginning, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight for my son, for my future, had started. The legal battle slogged on, a draining process of mediation attempts, financial disclosures, and temporary custody orders. Sarah, coached by Croft, stuck to her narrative. The long-suffering wife finally escaping an emotionally distant marriage, desperate to protect her son and secure her future. Mark remained mostly in the background, though his presence loomed large. Sarah often brought him to exchanges, a blatant attempt to provoke me, which, thanks to Jessica's counsel, I studiously ignored, focusing solely on Leo. It was during the discovery phase, the exchanging of financial documents, that things started to get interesting. Jessica had warned me that people often try to hide assets or downplay income in divorces, so we needed to be meticulous. We requested years' worth of bank statements, credit card bills, investment records, and business expenses. Sarah worked in marketing, often handling client entertainment budgets. At first, everything seemed relatively straightforward, matching the income she declared. But Jessica, with her forensic accountant's eye for detail, noticed anomalies: recurring payments to unfamiliar vendors, unusually high client dinner, expenses at restaurants we never frequented, cash withdrawals that didn't quite add up. "Something's not right here, David," she said, tapping a highlighted credit card statement. "These expense reimbursements she's claiming, they seem inflated. And these payments to Creative Consulting Solutions? That company doesn't seem to exist." My gut clenched. Sarah handled most of our day-to-day finances and her own business expenses. I trusted her implicitly. Had that trust been misplaced long before Mark arrived? We hired a forensic accountant, a quiet, unassuming man named Ben who had a knack for untangling complex financial webs. He dove into the records, cross-referencing Sarah's personal accounts, her business credit cards, and the documentation she'd submitted. Meanwhile, my own digging into Mark's background continued. I learned through a mutual acquaintance who worked at Mark's company, discreetly, of course, that his position was indeed precarious. There were rumors of internal reviews regarding his expense accounts and performance. Apparently, his dynamic innovation was more about schmoozing and less about actual results. His estranged wife was also pursuing him aggressively in their divorce, claiming he'd hidden assets and drained joint accounts, a pattern repeating itself. This information felt significant, but Jessica cautioned against using it directly unless it became relevant to Sarah's financial claims or fitness as a parent. "Let's focus on Sarah's actions first," she advised. "Mark's problems might become our leverage later." Weeks turned into months. The stress was immense. Juggling work, single parenthood, legal appointments, and the constant emotional strain felt like walking through mud. There were days I wanted to give up, just sign whatever papers Croft put in front of me to make it end. But then I'd look at Leo, see the lingering sadness behind his smile, remember the humiliation of that birthday party, and the resolve would return. Ben, the forensic accountant, finally delivered his report. It was explosive. He had uncovered systematic embezzlement. Sarah had been skimming from her company for at least 2 years, possibly longer. The Creative Consulting Solutions was a shell company she'd set up, funneling inflated expense reimbursements and fake vendor payments into an account under that name, an account she hadn't disclosed during discovery. The amounts weren't small. We were talking tens of thousands of dollars. She had been meticulously bleeding her employer dry. Ben had traced withdrawals from the shell account coinciding with expensive purchases, designer clothes, spa weekends, jewelry, and, more recently, significant cash gifts documented in transfers to Mark's personal account. So, not only was she embezzling, but she was using the stolen funds to finance her affair and prop up her lover. This changed everything. It wasn't just infidelity anymore. It was potential criminal activity. Jessica was stunned but immediately saw the implications. "This is the leverage we needed, David. This blows her credibility out of the water. Her claims of needing financial support seem ludicrous now. And if her employer finds out, the revenge aspect, which had simmered beneath the surface, now came into sharp focus. It wasn't about petty retaliation anymore. It was about exposing the truth and letting the consequences fall where they may. Sarah had built her entire case on a foundation of lies. Lies about our marriage, lies about her finances, lies about her character. It was time to dismantle that facade. We had a choice. Use this information privately as leverage in the divorce settlement or expose it more broadly. Using it privately might lead to a quicker, quieter resolution. Sarah would likely concede on custody, alimony, and asset division to avoid public ruin and potential prosecution. But something in me balked at that. She had publicly humiliated me, tried to paint me as the villain, and potentially committed serious fraud. Why should she get to walk away quietly, potentially moving on to her next victim, both professionally and personally, unscathed? Mark, too, benefited from her deception. Letting them both slink away felt fundamentally unjust. Jessica laid out the risks of a more public approach. It could get messy, potentially impacting Sarah's company and colleagues. and there was always the chance of unforeseen blowback. But the evidence was solid, meticulously documented by Ben. We decided on a two-pronged approach. First, present the evidence to Sarah and Croft privately, offering a settlement heavily skewed in my favor. Primary physical custody of Leo, with generous visitation for her, provided she demonstrated stability, a complete waiver of alimony, an unequal division of assets reflecting the embezzled funds, and she would be responsible for her own legal fees. This was the take it or leave it offer before we considered further action. Second, regardless of her response to the settlement offer, the information about the embezzlement needed to reach the right people at her company, not through anonymous tips, but through official channels, perhaps via Jessica communicating with the company's legal counsel, presenting Ben's findings professionally. It wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It was about corporate responsibility and preventing further fraud. The plan felt solid, righteous even. It wasn't driven by pure malice, but by a desire for truth and accountability. Sarah had made her choices: the affair, the public divorce announcement, the embezzlement, the lies. Now, she would have to face the consequences. The image of her standing beside Mark at Leo's party, so smug and defiant, flashed in my mind. The power dynamic was about to shift dramatically. The meeting was set at Jessica's office. Me, Jessica, Sarah, and her lawyer, Croft. The air was thick with tension before anyone even spoke. Sarah looked pale but defiant, avoiding my eyes. Croft projected his usual slick confidence, but I detected a flicker of unease. Jessica had likely hinted that new, significant information would be presented, without revealing specifics. After the initial pleasantries, Jessica didn't waste time. "Mr. Croft, Sarah," she began, her tone calm but firm, "we've completed our financial discovery, including a forensic accounting analysis of the documents provided, as well as some publicly available information. What we've uncovered raises serious concerns that go beyond the scope of this divorce." She paused, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. Croft shifted in his seat. "Concerns? What sort of concerns, Ms. Riley?" Jessica slid a thick binder across the table. "Perhaps you'd like to review Mr. Harrison's findings." It was Ben's report, detailing the shell company, the inflated expenses, the suspicious transactions, the flow of funds. As Croft and Sarah began flipping through the pages, the color drained from Sarah's face. Her hands started to tremble. Croft's professional mask slipped, replaced by visible shock, then anger, likely directed at his client for not disclosing this. He shot Sarah a furious look, but she just stared blankly at a page detailing wire transfers to Mark's account. This report details what appears to be systematic embezzlement from Sarah's employer totaling approximately $85,000 over the past 2 years, Jessica stated coolly. Funds funneled into an undisclosed account under the name Creative Consulting Solutions, coinciding with significant personal expenditures and transfers to Mr. Mark Jennings. Silence. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah looked physically ill. Croft closed the binder slowly. "Ms. Riley, these are serious allegations." "They are serious findings, Mr. Croft," Jessica countered, holding his gaze. "Fully documented. We have bank records, incorporation documents for the shell company, cross-referenced expense reports. It's quite thorough." She let that sink in, then presented our settlement offer. "Given these findings, our position has obviously changed. David is proposing the following. He retains primary physical custody of Leo, with a standard visitation schedule for Sarah. There will be no alimony requested or granted. The marital assets will be divided 70/30ths in David's favor to partially account for the misappropriated funds that benefited the marital estate, however briefly, and financed personal activities during the marriage. Sarah will be solely responsible for her own legal fees and any debts incurred since the separation. This is a one-time offer, contingent on a swift and amicable resolution. Croft looked like he'd been poleaxed. He knew instantly that his client's case had just evaporated. Her credibility was shot. Her financial claims were absurd. Worse, she was potentially facing criminal charges and civil lawsuits from her employer. He asked for a moment to confer privately with his client. Jessica and I stepped out. I felt strangely calm, almost detached. Seeing Sarah's composure crumble, seeing the raw fear in her eyes, didn't bring the satisfaction I might have expected. Instead, I felt a profound sense of sadness for the person she had become, for the destruction she had wrought upon herself. When they called us back in, the atmosphere had shifted. Sarah looked broken. Croft looked resigned. "My client," he began, choosing his words carefully, "disputes the characterization of these findings. But she is prepared to accept the proposed terms in the interest of resolving this matter quickly and privately, primarily for the well-being of the child." It was over. Just like that. The fight drained out of them. Sarah signed the settlement agreement right there, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She refused to look at me. As they were leaving, I spoke, not out of anger, but a need for closure. "Sarah," I said quietly. She stopped but didn't turn around. "Why? Why the party? Why him?" She finally turned, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, a flicker of the woman I once knew visible beneath the wreckage. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice choked. "I was drowning, unhappy. Mark made me feel seen. The party, it was cruel, I know. I thought it would make it final, make it impossible to go back. I'm sorry, David, for everything. It wasn't much, but it was something." An admission, however inadequate. Then she turned and walked away with Croft. Phase 1 was complete. The divorce was settled on my terms, protecting Leo and my financial future. Phase 2 involved her employer. Jessica contacted the company's general counsel, outlining the findings professionally and ethically, providing Ben's report. We weren't demanding action, merely presenting evidence of potential financial misconduct by an employee. The company launched its own internal investigation immediately. Within weeks, the consequences unfolded. Sarah was fired, obviously. The company decided to handle the matter internally to avoid scandal, but demanded full restitution of the embezzled funds, plus damages. They arranged a payment plan, secured against her remaining assets, her 30% share of our marital property, essentially. She avoided criminal charges, likely because the company preferred a quiet resolution and full repayment, but her career in marketing was effectively over, her reputation destroyed within her industry. And Mark? The fallout hit him too. Sarah, facing financial ruin and needing every penny to repay her former employer, could no longer subsidize his lifestyle. The transfer stopped. Furthermore, news of the embezzlement and Sarah's firing reached Mark's employer. Coupled with his own questionable expense reports and lackluster performance, and perhaps a quiet word from his estranged wife's lawyer, tipped off by the developments, Mark found his own position terminated shortly after Sarah's. His own divorce suddenly became much more contentious as his estranged wife now had clear evidence of his financial reliance on an affair partner using stolen funds. The last I heard, he was struggling to find comparable employment and facing significant legal and financial troubles of his own. Justice. It wasn't loud or explosive, but quiet and methodical. It was the natural consequence of their own actions. They built a relationship on lies, deceit, and stolen money, and it collapsed under its own weight once the truth came out. There was no gloating on my part, just a grim sense of vindication. They got what they deserved, not because I orchestrated some elaborate revenge plot, but because their own choices led them down that path. The focus now was on healing, on rebuilding a stable, loving environment for Leo, and moving forward. Looking back now, a couple of years down the line, life is drastically different, yet surprisingly peaceful. The initial months after the divorce settlement were tough, no doubt. Finalizing everything, selling the house, neither of us could realistically keep it, and frankly, it held too many ghosts. Setting up two separate households, co-parenting, it was a logistical and emotional roller coaster. Leo adjusted slowly but surely. Therapy helped both of us immensely. He needed a space to process his feelings about the divorce, about his mom's actions, without feeling like he had to protect my feelings. I needed it to unpack the trauma, the betrayal, the anger, and learn how to trust again, not just others, but myself, my judgment, my intuition, which I'd ignored for so long. Primary custody means Leo is with me most of the time, and we've fallen into a comfortable rhythm. School runs, homework, soccer practice, weekend adventures. Our bond, already strong, has deepened. I've learned to be both mom and dad in many ways, mastering laundry complexities and school bake sale contributions alongside teaching him how to ride his bike without stabilizers and navigate playground politics. He sees his mom regularly, on weekends and holidays, as per the agreement. Sarah, well, Sarah is a work in progress. Facing the consequences of her actions head-on forced a reckoning. Losing her job, her reputation, and the financial security she craved and stole was a brutal wake-up call. The relationship with Mark disintegrated almost immediately once the money dried up and the investigation started. Predictable, really. Last I heard, he moved out of state, still entangled in his own messy divorce. Sarah had to move into a small apartment, find a much lower-paying job in a different field, and start the slow process of rebuilding her life and repaying her debt. More importantly, she had to start rebuilding trust with Leo. It hasn't been easy for either of them. Leo loves his mom, but he's not naive. He saw the upheaval, felt the tension, even if he didn't understand the specifics of the embezzlement. Sarah is trying. She shows up consistently for her visitation time. She seems genuinely focused on him when they're together, and she's apologized, to him, and again to me, more sincerely this time. Our interactions are civil, focused solely on Leo's well-being. There's no friendship, no warmth, perhaps too much water has passed under that bridge. But there's a functional co-parenting relationship, which is more than I could have hoped for in the immediate aftermath. Do I forgive her? That's a complicated question. I understand, intellectually, that she was deeply unhappy, likely struggling with issues I didn't fully grasp. I understand that people make terrible mistakes when they feel trapped or desperate. But the way she chose to handle it, the affair, the lies, the embezzlement, the calculated cruelty of that birthday party ambush, inflicted wounds that don't just vanish. Forgiveness, for me, isn't about forgetting or excusing. It's about releasing the anger and resentment that poisons my own life. I'm not there 100%, but I'm working on it, for my own peace and for Leo's sake. He deserves parents who can be cordial, even if they aren't friends. As for revenge, the way things unfolded felt less like revenge and more like karmic justice. Exposing the embezzlement wasn't about destroying Sarah. It was about revealing the truth that underpinned the entire situation. The consequences she and Mark faced were direct results of their own choices. My satisfaction comes not from their downfall, but from protecting my son, securing our future, and ensuring the truth prevailed over the lies they tried to construct. I learned a lot about myself through this ordeal. I learned I'm stronger and more resilient than I ever thought possible. I learned the importance of trusting my gut instincts and addressing problems head-on, rather than hoping they'll disappear. I learned that protecting my peace and my child's well-being is paramount. I also learned that rebuilding a life after betrayal is possible. It's not easy, and it takes time, but it happens. I'm dating again, cautiously, focusing on finding someone who values honesty, communication, and mutual respect. My main focus remains Leo, ensuring he grows up feeling loved, secure, and understands that even when bad things happen, life goes on, and happiness can be found again. The scars remain, a reminder of the betrayal, but they no longer dictate my present or my future. The bounce house may have deflated that day, but my life didn't collapse with it. It just changed direction, leading me down a path I never expected, but one where I'm finally finding my footing, stronger and more self-aware than before. Looking back, I realize I lost a part of myself, but I also found something stronger. If you've ever been betrayed, know this: you're not alone, and healing is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real stories like this one. Until next time, take care of yourself.